What's up, guys? It's Colin from Next Man Up, and today I want to talk about every NBA team's biggest X factor going into the 2024 season. X factors don't necessarily need to be the best players on the court, but they're guys whose performance will be fundamental to their team's success or their failure. I did my research, and I'm going to give you one for every team, so let's start with the Celtics. The Celtics' biggest X factor in 2024 will be Peyton Pritchard. Pritchard is going into his fourth year with the team, and he's yet to have made a significant impact on the Celtics. He's a fan favorite and he's an electric scorer, but he's got stuck in the background for the Celtics team. That could all change this season. With the Celtics bench being thinner than usual, it seems like Pritchard will be the primary backup point guard and take most of the minutes in that spot for a Celtics team that's trying to make a finals run. If Pritchard elevates his defense and is a stud on this team, they'll win the championship. But if he's not cut out for consistent minutes, Boston will probably struggle down the stretch. For the Nets, I'm going to go with Cam Johnson. After starting his career in Phoenix, Cam Johnson looked like a really solid get in the Kevin Durant trade, which obviously centered around Mikal Bridges. Bridges will probably be the best player for Brooklyn, but Cam Johnson looked great in an amplified role with the Nets last season. If he can keep that up, he'll be a starting forward for the Nets' future. If he can jump up to a 20-point-per-game scorer this season, the Nets could be a legit playoff contender. But if he stays stagnant and reverts to the role player that he was for the Suns, he might be brushed under the rug. Next up, I'm not surprising anyone when I pick RJ Barrett for the New York Knicks. It feels like we do this every year, but RJ Barrett needs to step up if the Knicks want to contend this season. The rest of the roster is built up nicely. Brunson and Randall seem like a legit duo, even though Randall has had his playoff struggles, and RJ took a small step back last season, coming off what was his strongest year in 2022. RJ is only 23, and the Knicks look like they're willing to commit to him as the long-term solution at the small forward position. But eventually, he'll have to play up to those expectations, something that he's yet to do in New York up to this point. Next up for the Philadelphia 76ers, I'm going to go with Tyrese Maxey. The 76ers are a tough team to read because we're yet to know what the James Harden situation will result in. Assuming Harden is on the move or just won't be playing in Philadelphia this season, it has to be Tyrese Maxey. Maxey came alive last season and showed off in the playoffs that he can play like one of the best guards in the NBA on any given night. The 22-year-old is one of the best three-point shooters in the league, and if he continues to develop as a star, this 76ers team can keep their championship window open. But if he hits a wall and doesn't jump over the 20-point-per-game hump, a rebuild might be necessary in Philly sooner than later. Next up is the Toronto Raptors, and I'm going to have to go with Scottie Barnes. The Rookie of the Year surpassed most expectations in the 2022 season, as his fundamental style of basketball led to a 15-7-3 stat line and some hardware. But after a season with almost identical stats, it's fair to worry if he'll ever be a good first option on a team. This Raptors team especially is not playoff caliber, and they might move on from a combination of OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam this season. If the team blows up, Scottie will be under pressure to be an all-star. Will he be able to do so? We'll have to find out. For the Chicago Bulls, it's going to have to be Kobe White. Lonzo Ball unfortunately won't be in a Bulls jersey for the foreseeable future, but the Bulls have a rotation of guards who have stepped up when they needed to. Whether it's Caruso or Ayo, I get it, but I think it'll need to be Kobe White this season. White will be back as the Bulls starting point guard, and he needs to make a point of being a more willing playmaker. He's an athlete, and he can shoot the ball, but he needs to create more opportunities for his teammates and get that assist total back up to around where it was in 2021. I don't like the Bulls' direction, but I'd be a lot more happy if what they were doing allowed Kobe White to flash his full potential. He's got to be the guy. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, I'm going to roll with Evan Mobley. This one feels obvious. Evan Mobley has already showed he's one of the best defensive players in all of basketball in his early career. Mobley needs to prove that he's not an offensive liability, though. If he shows his end-to-end capabilities that he showed at USC at the NBA level, the Cavs could make a push for the NBA Finals, truly. But if Mobley is just a worse Nick Claxton again in 2023 and continues to shoot around 20% from the three-point line, this Cavs team will get bottled up early once again by a team that can handle Donovan Mitchell. Mobley has to be more dynamic, and I think Cavs fans will be happy to see that development. For the Pistons, I'm going to roll with Ausar Thompson. This is the first rookie on this list so far, and it really had to be Ausar Thompson for this Pistons team. I think some will argue Cade Cunningham, but I'm a huge fan of his, and I have no doubt he'll be the best player on this Pistons team. I see him as a guaranteed performer. Ausar Thompson, on the other hand, comes in as sort of an unknown. A lot of NBA fans will have never seen him play until opening night, and he's already jumped the top 5 pick Jaden Ivey in the depth chart through the preseason. If Ausar flashes athleticism while playing top-tier defense, he's already a face of this Pistons team. If he struggles shooting like we've seen both him and his brother Amen do throughout their career, Ivy will probably work his way back into the starting five. If you want to learn some more about the Thompsons, check out Banning's video he put up last week, by the way. Let's keep going, though. For the Indiana Pacers, I'm going to roll with the newcomer Obi Toppin. The Pacers went out and acquired Obi Toppin this offseason. Toppin was a college star at Dayton and found himself rotting in a loaded Knicks front court to start his career. But through training camp, Obi has secured the starting 4 spot over Jarace Walker and looks to notch over 20 minutes a night for the first time in his career. If he flies high and shoots the 3 with efficiency, he'll shine with Halliburton facilitating for him, but he'll have a lot of pressure with the young Jarace Walker on his tail, so he's really got to step up. Next up for the Milwaukee Bucks, I got to pick MarJon Beauchamp. We all know this Bucks team will be great. Lillard, Middleton, Giannis, and Brook have already proved everything they need in order to consider this Bucks team one of the best in the NBA. MarJon has been getting high praise this preseason, and by the mid-stretch of this long NBA season, we could see him crack the starting lineup if the rumors are true. I'm not expecting insane numbers, but if he can be the glue guy that fills in at the starting spot, I think Bucks fans would be pretty happy. For the Atlanta Hawks, I'm going to take Onyeka Okongwu. The Hawks moved on from John Collins, which should give Onyeka more time in the front court, but with modern-day small ball, Saddiq Bey could get the starting nod over him on most nights. If Onyeka shows his shot-blocking abilities and keeps building chemistry with Trae Young, he could be in for a big year, but if he stays complacent, he might just be Capella's perennial backup. Next up for the Hornets, I'm going to roll with PJ Washington. The nod could have been given to Brandon Miller here, but I'm really interested to see how this season goes for PJ Washington. He's only 25, and he was putting up 16 a game last season and looks to start at the 4 this year again. His defense has been steadily improving over the years. If he can solidify his play on that end of the court, he'll be able to stick in this lineup, but if not, I don't think Hornets fans will be too sad to lose him in the future. You guys saw the thumbnail of the video. For the Miami Heat, I'm going to roll with Tyler Hero. We all know Tyler can play great basketball, and we've seen it before, but we also know that the bubble was a weird place where we saw plenty of fluky performances, and unfortunately, we just haven't seen a whole lot of high-level Tyler Hero since then. Hero survived the Dame trade rumors, and he's going to come back to a Heat team as healthy as possible and hopefully be the second option on that offense. If he fails in that role, the Heat are going to be outside of the playoffs for the first time in a while. But if he kicks into that second gear that we now know he has, the Heat have enough around him to make another push just like we saw last year. For the Orlando Magic, I'm going to take Jalen Suggs. Suggs hasn't lived up to expectations in Orlando, and every year they seem to add more names into that backcourt to give him competition. With Fultz surpassing expectations, Suggs slides into the starting shooting guard spot, with guys like Cole Anthony and Anthony Black breathing down his neck to get themselves some more minutes. We saw the dynamic combo guard of Jalen Suggs at Gonzaga, but so far in the NBA, we've seen a shell of that player. Suggs will have to continue raising that 3-point percentage and do more as a shot creator, or he might just be out of Orlando in general sooner than later. For the Wizards, no surprise, I'm taking Jordan Poole. Getting Poole was the Wizards' biggest move of the offseason, and as mentioned in my co-host Banning's video, he has potential to put up MVP numbers. It's a bit strange considering the Wizards have no expectations, but I feel like he has a lot of pressure on him to perform this season. If Poole continues to inconsistently shot chuck, then he has a chance to fade into the background on the team while Kuzma gets more and more touches. But if he shoots a high clip from 3 consistently and uses these minutes as opportunities to work on his perimeter defense as well, he could develop into the next Bradley Beal. I mean, that's a pretty good place to be. Now, to kick it over to the West, let's talk about the Denver Nuggets. Their X factor is Peyton Watson. You guys might remember Watson from UCLA, but we haven't really seen any of him in the NBA. With Bruce Brown now in Indiana, Peyton Watson looks to fill his shoes as a clutch shooter and a strong defensive forward. We saw Chris Braun take on some of that role last season, but especially with Jeff Green gone as well, a lot of that will fall on Watson this season. If he steps up in big moments and mans the bench unit in Denver, they won't miss the loss of aforementioned Bruce Brown all too much. But if he gets run off the court and isn't NBA ready, the Nuggets may struggle when their starters are off the court. For the Timberwolves, I had to pick Naz Reid. Naz is in an interesting spot, and I'll make a take. I'll go out on a limb and say he's the most underrated player in basketball right now. He crushes every offensive advanced stat, and the way he plays the game is tough and electric. The Timberwolves need to give this guy minutes, and it's a shame he's still coming off the bench. If Naz keeps up his level of play, the T-Wolves could be in a position to break up their front court duo that they've invested so much into. But if Naz doesn't take that step up, he might just be glued to that second unit for the foreseeable future. For the Oklahoma City Thunder, I'm rolling with Ousmane Dieng. Ousmane is in a really interesting spot. He was the 11th overall pick just a couple years ago, and he's only notched 39 games in the NBA thus far. He was brought in to be a project, and with forwards ahead of him leaving, he's going to get real minutes off the bench this season. He's athletic, he's long, but he needs to bring together those offensive fundamentals in order to be a real option for OKC. If he doesn't do so, the Thunder can move on from him somewhat swiftly, so the pressure is really on Zhang this year to perform. And for the Portland Trailblazers, I had to pick Robert Williams III. Rob was one of my favorite players as a Celtic, and his defensive ability and hustle made him a fan favorite for all Boston fans. He's in a tough spot now in Portland though, with DeAndre Ayton taking a hypothetical starting spot away from him, but as we saw in Boston, Rob can play off the bench as well. If Rob brings defensive intensity and continues crafting his above-the-rim offense, somebody is going to want him in their starting lineup, Portland or not. But if he continues to be plagued by injuries and shoot inefficiently, the Blazers really have no pressure to give him minutes now or ever. For the Jazz, I'm going to go with John Collins. John Collins finally got out of Atlanta and finds himself as a starting 4 for the Utah Jazz. Utah invested a high draft pick into Taylor Hendricks, who is knocking on the door for playing time and has a lot more defense in his game than a guy like Collins. If Collins can continue to make electric plays downhill and keep hitting those spot-up threes, there's a world where he creates an unstoppable duo with Lauri Markkanen. But if he can't find a role in this Jazz team, I'm not sure what his NBA future looks like, if I can be honest. Now, kicking it to the Bay, for the Golden State Warriors, I have to say Chris Paul. It's kind of weird to consider Chris Paul an X factor at the age of 38, especially with how much he's produced in the past. But it is just so odd to see him on this Warriors team, and there's a world where the Warriors win another ring in 2024. Chris Paul gets his first ring at the point, but there is a world where he shoots around 40% from the field and averages 10 or less points per game on their bench. The ceilings and floors of this experiment vary heavily from each other, so Chris Paul will determine a lot for this Golden State season. If that's not an X factor, I don't know what is. Now, for the Los Angeles Clippers, I'm going to say Bones Hyland. The verdict on Bones Hyland isn't out yet. He's widely considered a good player, but he's never shot over 40% from the field in his career, and he's a defensive liability at his size. The Clippers need contributors off their bench, and Bones looks to be one of those guys. If he can just have some better judgment on his shot selection, he'll be a stud, because we know his range is unlimitless. But if the Clippers are going for a title run, they just can't afford to play a small, inefficient combo guard down the stretch, so Bones has to decide which player he'll be this season. Next up, for the Los Angeles Lakers, I know a lot of people are waiting for this one. My pick is Jared Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is not an offensive mastermind by any means, but there's a reason the Lakers went after him at the trade deadline last season, and there's a reason we can expect him to start at the 4 for the Lakers. He plays heads-up defense and crashes the boards with authority. Vanderbilt seems like he's always making the right reads, and he's a player that should continue to mesh well with Anthony Davis and LeBron. When we get to the playoffs, teams will test Vanderbilt on offense. If he can be comfortable with the ball in his hands, I think the Lakers have their guy. But if he shies away from the pressure, the Lakers will miss out on an amazing defensive front court pair with him and Davis. For the Phoenix Suns, I'm going to say Josh Okogie. Josh Okogie was a really solid player on the Suns last year, and in a season plus an off season of immense roster turnover in Phoenix, he finds himself as the starting small forward on a newly built Supers team. Okogie can ball, we all know this, but can he build out a role more than just defensive specialist with Beal, Book, and KD all on the floor with him? If he continues to do what he's been doing, he'll be just fine, but that's a lot easier said than done with a whole new organization and coaching staff. For Okogie, the pressure is on. For the Sacramento Kings, I'm going to roll with Sasha Vezenkov. Vezenkov is a curious case. His signing went completely under the radar this offseason, but let's remember, this is the reigning EuroLeague MVP we're talking about. Sasha shoots lights out from the 3 and has looked pretty solid throughout the preseason. If Sasha can make the transition over to the NBA game, I've heard some rumors that he could earn a starting spot in Sacramento. But if not, he could just be another stud European ball player that disappoints in the NBA. So watch out for him. For the Dallas Mavericks, I have to roll with Josh Green. This Mavs team has seen some things in the last couple years. We're at a point where the team has Luka and Kyrie, but their third option will have to be Josh Green. Green had his role expanded last year with stints in and out of the starting 5, and he's pretty solid at getting to the rack. Green is an aggressive player, but he has to be willing to pick up slack and embrace that third option role. The Mavericks can't afford for their role players to underperform. If they see themselves as a playoff team, they need these guys to step up. And to be honest, Josh Green is at the forefront of that group, so there's a lot of pressure on him. I hate picking teams' best players for their X factors, but this one has to be Jalen Green. As of now, he's kind of been a high-volume, low-production sort of guy. The Rockets trust him to be the face of the franchise, but he has to tighten up on those wild jumpers and turnovers if he's really that guy. KPJ's gone, Amen Thompson is in, and Jalen Green has to take on more of a leadership role, despite only being 21. Fred VanVleet can hold some slack, but Green needs to take that next step to all-star level if he wants the Rockets to really invest in him. I think he can do it, but he's running out of slack as he enters his third season. It's time to see the best of Jalen Green pretty soon. For the Grizzlies, give me Marcus Smart. Boston sent over Smart to the Grizzlies this offseason, and his leadership and mentality have made him a household name over there. With that all being said, Smart's story will be a tale of two seasons in 2023-2024. He'll need to lead this Grizzlies team as the starting point guard to open up in the absence of Ja Morant. 25 games is a long time, and Smart needs to come out firing if Memphis doesn't want to fall behind. When Ja does come back, Smart will have the pressure on him to be a Sixth Man of the Year candidate and prove mentorship off the bench for this Grizzlies team. Smart has a lot to undertake in his first year in Memphis, and if he falls short, he's probably not going to be hanging around in their long-term plans going forward. Smart's got to step up. For the Pelicans, of course, is Zion Williamson. I'll keep it simple. Zion tells the story of the Pelicans season. If he's on the court, we know he has the abilities of an all-star, and this Pelicans team is automatically competing for the playoffs. But we've yet to see Zion put together a healthy season up till this point. It's not about the play, it's about how much we'll see him on the court in 2024, and I know a lot of Pelicans fans probably feel the same way. Hey, we're at the end of the video. Let's end this one off with a pretty cold take. For the San Antonio Spurs, it's Victor Wembanyama. Victor has been the most hyped up prospect since LeBron James, and for good reason. At 7'5", he has abilities like a small forward. He can block almost any shot on the court. With all eyes on him, will he be able to be that star in San Antonio? He doesn't need to lead them to a bunch of wins, but he has to shine on the court with a lot of haters ready to jump on him early if things start slow. I hope to see Victor go hard, and if he does, we'll all be watching greatness. With that being said, that is all I got today, and I want to ask you guys something. Who do you think is your favorite team's X Factor going into the new season? There's a lot of good options, so fire off in the comments. There's a lot of basketball coming soon, and just remember, stick with the next man up, especially if you want more content throughout the entire season. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace out.